Hi, everyone. So it's my privilege to talk to you a little bit today about cannabis breeding. And most of the time when I mention cannabis to audiences, they either think of that friend that we all had in college, or they think of piles of money. And I think that the piles of money story is true in a way, but I think a bit misdirected. When I see this, I see it as enormous market potential. Of course, within the recreational THC and CBD space, this is a big market, 340 billion globally. Most of this is illegal, most of it is coming into the light slowly, and we want this to be a safe, accessible market for everybody who needs it. But there's so much more. Cannabis is not just that plant, it's also hemp. And hemp produces fiber, protein, oil, amazing products which can be integrated into supply chains to really greenify those supply chains. Some examples are just on the protein side. Soy is currently used as an animal feed, primarily, and this is a $150 billion market. Hemp can be used to produce alternatives to plastic, a $500 billion market. Hemp can be used as an alternative to building materials and can be used for advanced material manufacture, as pharmaceuticals, and as some of the other presentations I've spoken about today, can be used to generate carbon credits. It's a very fast-growing plant. So it really is a wonder plant, but then the question that everybody has is, why aren't we using it everywhere? And the answer is, it's not ready for industry. And I'll tell you a bit more about that now. So this is the state of the industry, and just focusing in on that one slice, which is really indicative of the rest of the industry, which is the cannabinoid market, so the pharmaceutical market. What we've seen is that in places like Canada and other places where it's moving towards legalization, billions of dollars are spent on creating these perfect environments to grow a weed. These environments are CO2 supplemented, lit with LED lighting, enclosed boxes with CO2 supplementation to grow a plant. So vast amounts of energy are going into this, vast amounts of money, but it doesn't seem to be really reflecting in value of these companies. So you have to ask yourself, where is the disconnect? And the disconnect is that no other plant in the food system is grown in this way. And that is because all plants are bred for their environment, and they don't have their environment changed for the plant. It's crazy. And there's so much more that can be done in this space. So let me tell you a little bit about breeding. What does an apple taste like? An apple doesn't taste like an apple. An apple tastes like what a breeder thinks an apple should taste like. And this is the potential of plants. You can push them in a direction that you want them to go, but it takes time and energy. Corn is a great example. In the 1940s and 1920s, it was still a very scrubby, unstable plant, and only through modern breeding and agricultural techniques have we gotten it up to the level where it is today. And this has resulted in a 250, 300% increase in its productivity on the field. In that time, cannabis has been under prohibition, so none of these modern technologies have been applied to cannabis. And this means that what we know, what we see, is that there's about 300 to 500% more potential productivity that we can unlock from this plant. And that's important when you look at the potential applications. What we're doing is we're addressing this on all fronts. We need to really understand the plant. So, of course, no matter what you think about high THC pharmaceutical cannabis, what is clear is that this is one of the best, most successful non-industrial breeding programs that has ever been applied to any plant. So, in our research program, we need to be able to access this. We do this by working with the Swiss Federal Authority for Health. We have special permits to work with THC material, and we generate data for them that informs them on how to write the legislation that's coming out in Switzerland in the near future. But for us as a breeding company, it's really what we need to do is access the traits, the physical characteristics that are locked in these plants. So we've done this through several extremely large experiments. And we have to do these large experiments because, as I mentioned, cannabis has had effectively no scientific research done on it up until this point. So we had to go right back to the beginning and start from scratch. So we generated enormously complex genome sequences for these plants, and then we do field studies like this to functionalize the plants. Now take a look here. At the front, we have a tent where people are measuring every physical characteristic of the plant. On the left-hand side, you'll see over 8,000 individual genotypes. Every plant there is absolutely unique, and every plant is ripped out of the ground, dragged to the front of the field, dissected, measured, photographed, sent off for analytics, and the DNA extracted and resequenced. And this is the scale of research that you have to do. This was just 2020. We've done this again in 2021, and we have other glasshouse experiments running in Switzerland and all over the world, just to generate the data that we need to be able to apply modern breeding to this crop. So in this process, we've looked at thousands of unique plants, tens of thousands now actually. We have 75 fully assembled reference genomes, which we are functionalizing. We have 2 million physical characteristics of this plant measured, so physical data points. What is the leaf color? What is the shape? What is the cannabinoid content? What is the fiber content, etc. We've found over 50 million differences in the genomes of the plants that we've looked at. And each one of these polymorphisms, we call them, each one of these is a potential to generate a new characteristic in a plant, which we're able to map and control in our breeding programs. Through this process, we've mapped over 312 individual characteristics to the genome, and these map to over 1,000 different loci, positions on those genomes. And then using all of this data, we're able to drive breeding forward through this reassembly and variety development program. But the difference here is that now we can leverage this enormous data set to be able to do our breeding in silico, so in a computer, rather than using millions of plants in the field, which is the classic way of doing it. So that's not a perfect system, but it gives us enormous predictive power to be able to accelerate breeding in any direction that we want to take it, whether it's for a high THC plant, a CBD, but more importantly, for fiber, protein, oil production. So what does this mean for us as a company? How do we fit into the market? Well, Puregene can't do it all. What we do is we plug our breeding and our expertise into existing companies. So the obvious example might be if you look at production of cannabis. We go into a production environment, we deploy a breeding program, we develop varieties which are tailor-made for their environment and for the market that they want to address. But there's a better example. Think about soy. Soy is one of the major crops for protein from plants, but it's grown in the Amazon rainforest, which we have to cut down to be able to make space to grow this plant. It's very humid, you have to spray it with pesticides, then you have to transport that soy to the feedlots to feed to cattle or to processing facilities, which has a carbon cost associated with it, and then only you get your final product out. Cannabis can grow anywhere, and today it's almost as productive as soy is in terms of protein. But now remember, that first slide that I showed you, there's about 300 to 500% more capacity locked in this plant that we can unlock through modern breeding. And that's what Puregene aims to do. So we want to establish cannabis as the next crop for agriculture grown all over the world. So we like to say that too much investment has gone into building environments for cannabis and not enough time in breeding the plant for its environment. And that's what we do. We create cannabis for agriculture. And if you want to learn more, please feel free to follow this QR code.
Thank you so much, Gavin, for being with us today.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions? I repeat just for the audience at home, what would be for you the main areas of impact for your project?
So we want to see cannabis used in all applications where there is an advantage in terms of supply chain, greenification, and really just environmental impact. This is broad. from fiber, alternative to cotton that doesn't use as much water, alternative to protein sources such as soy, and for building materials. All of these are very carbon intensive. Cannabis grows everywhere. It just needs to be bred for those environments, and that's what we do.